your mercies one more day. Thank you because we are able to also be participants of your body and your church, and we are able also to um, um, we are able to partner with different organizations, people, churches, and that's a privilege that you give to us. Thank you for the technology that allow us to connect from different parts around the world and to continue learning uh, for um, fulfilling your will, Lord, and for also getting to know other people, your people who are doing a wonderful work and ministry in different parts of the world. In Jesus' name, I commend this time to you. Thank you for Regina, that is going to be teaching today and facilitating, and also for Vicky, who is going to help Regina during the training. In Jesus' name, I pray, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Regina, welcome. It's great to have you here again and ready to continue learning.
Thank you so much, Mauricio. I really love this model called exploring stories using with open Bibles. If you are working with, whatever you're doing with Bible storytelling and discussion, I really encourage you to feel free to kind of tinker with whatever model you're using as you get confident and familiar with it, and gear it toward your audience. So for me, the ideal audience here are people who are used to reading their Bibles, bringing their Bibles to church. It's not necessary that everybody is comfortably literate. A lot of people are carrying around Bibles even if they can't read them very well, honestly. Because in countries where there's a high schooling is expected, if you're struggling with reading, you're going to pretend you're a good reader, even if you're not. But the thing is with sometimes a Bible storytelling and discussion, where those who are most literate get most nervous is about memorizing that Bible story, remembering that Bible story accurately. And oftentimes they don't pick up the model or don't run with the model simply because they are nervous about learning the Bible story well. So what this model accomplishes, it gets them to learn the model well, those who are literate, in a rather clever way. And really, for most of us, what we want people to do is go out and share those stories. Only the church planter, though, needs to have a super accurate model, who's working with non-literates. But we who can be sharing in a coffee shop or any other place, accuracy is less important. And so if people are regularly, habitually bringing their Bibles to church, and that's really most of North America, most of Central and South America, most of Europe, if they're going to church, they're already used to bringing their Bible. And so let's encourage that. Let's keep them using their Bibles. That's why this is called exploring stories with open Bibles. And yet you'll see that it moves. Those of you that have attended earlier sessions here with EduTech and have taken other workshops on Bible storytelling discussion, you'll see that it just moves right along with the same principles. And I hope you really enjoy it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to use our Bibles. So everybody should have their Bible. If you don't have a Bible with you, trundle off and get your favorite version. We're going to have a volunteer share the story. The volunteer should be sharing it in their own words without and with enthusiasm, without a whole lot of pressure on absolute accuracy. And then we're going to open our Bibles up and review it together and kind of look for, where did they add or where did they forget something? And it's really interesting when we have different Bible versions also. That's a great discussion point to see how it was translated, because, none of us are reading the original Aramaic. It had to be interpreted, and there's various interpretations. Then we're going to close our Bibles, and one of you needs to volunteer to share a story, and then we'll open it up again and check. We'll go back and forth like this a couple of times, and then we'll go into a time of discussion. And so I want to welcome those who have recently joined in. So glad to have you here. My name is Regina, and I'm delighted to be with you today. And Vicky's helping me. And so, Vicky, could you, also the other part of this is if this is to be with an ongoing Bible study. And so normally we'd start by asking, how did your week go, or your 2 weeks, and did you share the story with someone? Were you able to apply the story in your life? And start with a reflection and often a review of the previous Bible story. But since we didn't meet last week, folks, we're going to jump right into step 2, which is an introduction. So this story takes place, it's a New Testament story. Jesus had been teaching all day long. He'd been teaching from a boat because the crowds were so large. And this is relatively early in his ministry, certainly in the first year. So Vicki, could you share the Bible story with us?
Yes.
And excuse me, everybody has their Bibles closed right now. So I don't want you to be distracted reading. Bibles closed.
Yes. Well, on that day, when evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." So they left the crowd, and they took Jesus in the boat with them, just as he was. And there were also other boats with him. And when they went out, a wind storm arose, and the waves were rocking the boat, and the boat was already filling up. But Jesus, he was asleep in the stern on a pillow. And the disciples went to wake up Jesus, and they said, "Don't you care about us?" And Jesus woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And then Jesus said to the disciples, "Why are you still so afraid?" And the disciples had great fear, and they began to ask each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him." And that's our story.
Oh, thank you so much, Vicki. Let's give her a hand, huh? Okay, let's open our Bibles to Mark chapter 4. We're starting at verse 35. And if you are working with some who you were concerned that maybe if some couldn't read in your group, you could simply read the verse out loud from your Bible and have everybody listen. So let's look at the first verse. And did Vicki add anything or forget anything important here? Let's say the first 2 verses. And Mauricio, we should have all the mics on. Can you turn all the mics on?
Yes, give me a second here. Yeah, they are open.
Okay, so they're
You
open,
need
like,
to open yourself, and anytime you want to use it. Yeah, they are open now.
great, thank you. Okay. I don't remember, did she say that they took him with him just as he was, or?
Yes.
Okay. Did she mention the other little boats?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Looking really good here. Let's move down to the next two verses. So I remember her saying that the waves were rocking the boat. You know, I'm sure they were rocking the boat. It's not in here.
I'm not sure. She said that they were breaking into the boat and the boat was already filling. Did you say that, Vicky?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. I thought she did an amazing job with it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
She did. Anything else?
But I did leave something out.
Yeah, I'm waiting for someone else to find that. What'd she say they said?
No, I think she didn't mention he was on a cushion. Is that the one you're missing?
Right, she said he was on a cushion, but he said, teacher, don't you care? But she forgot that.
That we were
But
perishing.
we're perishing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move down to the next two verses. Such tiny mistakes. You made it hard for us, Vicky. She did a great job.
Don't remember. I remember she saying, "Why are you so afraid?" But did you say, "Have you still no faith?"
Yeah, very good.
Your
Very-
mic's off, Vicky.
Mike.
I did not say that. You good listening.
Okay, and did you say it became perfectly calm, or?
She
Yes.
did.
Boy, she's good.
Yeah,
She is.
she has the job.
And now next verse, last verse, did she say they became very much afraid or even more
Yes.
afraid?
She did.
Okay, she's raised the bar high, folks. Let's get a volunteer. Let's get a volunteer. Or is there anything else, Vicky? Did we miss anything? Okay, great job, guys. So I need one of you to volunteer to tell the story. It's not a test. It's not a test. In your own words. Who's my volunteer? I can't see Daniel or Victoria. So I'm gonna do this one more time. Usually we do this 3 times, at least 3 times. And with some longer stories, we would probably could do it more. Come on, someone, let's be bold. Victoria, are you?
Oh, I can try it.
Thank you, honey. I'm
Somebody has to.
You can do it.
Since we're pointing out what people missed, I should be good at this.
Okay, I want everybody to shut their Bibles again so that we can really concentrate on Victoria's presentation.
Well, Jesus Our story today is about Jesus. He'd been teaching the crowds, and he said to his disciples, "Let's go to the other side of the lake." So they went down and got in the boat. They took Jesus into the boat just as he was, and there were other boats in the area. And a storm came up on the lake, and it was ferocious. And the waves were actually coming over the sides of the boat, and the boat was beginning to fill with water. But Jesus was asleep in the stern on a cushion. And the disciples went to him and said, "Don't you care that we are perishing?" And Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and waves. He said, "Peace, be still." And immediately the waves stopped. Everything became perfectly calm. And Jesus and the disciples were greatly afraid. And Jesus said, "Why, or where's your faith? Do you still doubt?" Something like that. And the disciples were greatly afraid, and they said, "Who then is this that even the waves and the sea, the wind and the sea obey him?"
Great job, Victoria.
I'm not sure that had perfect chronology, but
That was very good. Very good. So let's open our Bibles again back to Mark 4, verse 35 and 36. Anything added or forgotten? Did she say it was evening or at the end of the day?
no.
Did she say that leaving the crowd?
No.
Yeah, and I didn't explain to you, Victoria, that you didn't need to do the introduction. So I should have cued you on just start at and given you the first phrase. So that was confusing for you. But that's my fault, not yours. Okay, let's go down to verses 37 and 38. I love your description of that tremendous storm. It was very good. Did she add anything or forget anything? I'm making you guys think.
I don't think she used his title,
Okay.
teacher.
And then she said that they went to him, but she didn't use the little verb woke him up. It's pretty obvious. He woke him up. These are fine hairs they were talking about because these cows did such a good job. Let's go down to 39 and 40.
We missed one of them.
Yeah, I don't think I said, "Why are you afraid?" I kind of
Yeah,
fumbled that. I said something, I don't remember even what I
you
said.
said you were talking about their faith, which is the one that most people miss, but yeah.
Right.
You address their faith twice.
Yeah.
Then, she got the order a little turned here.
Hmm.
Better to repeat and get your order wrong and say it twice.
Yeah.
And then 41, I think that was a great job. Really good job. Right off the spot, Victoria. That's great. So, I normally do this in a 2-hour session. And let's see what time we have here.
After it's told a couple of times, it's hard to remember who said what.
Yeah. Could we get just one more volunteer to share the story? And we're not going to check this third storytelling for time's sake. Does that take the pressure off? I need another volunteer. Great job, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great story. I'm sure you have that running like a little video in your mind. So it's not that important that you tell it exactly as it's written. It's important that you just retell that story that's running in your mind. Who's going to volunteer? Thank you.
I'll give it a try.
I don't have your name. I just have a phone number, so I don't want to call you 839 da da da.
My name is John.
Thank you so much, John. Go ahead.
So, in my own words, at the end of the day, after Jesus had been teaching from the boat to the crowd, he left the crowd behind and they went across the lake. And as they were crossing the lake, there was other boats that were following them. But I guess Jesus was tired. He fell asleep at the stern of the boat, and he was cuddled up on a pillow when along comes a storm, and the storm had a heavy wind, and the wind was blowing waves across the boat, and water was coming in the boat. They were getting swamped, and they were worried. So they went to look for Jesus and found him asleep, and they woke him up and said to him, "Don't you care that we may perish or drown in this storm?" And Jesus got up and went out and talked to the wind and said, rebuked it and said, "Be quiet." And everything became calm. Then there was a conversation between Jesus and the disciples, and he said to them, "Were you afraid? Did you lose your faith?" And Jesus had impressed them deeply with this miracle he had done, and they commented to themselves, "Who is this that the wind and the storms listen to him," or something like that. End of story.
Great job, John. Thank you so
Book
much.
closed.
That was definitely your own words, sir. I loved it. Very good. Okay. So you will find, I'll just make a little comment here about the method. You will find that after 3 storytellings, 3 volunteers, 3 checking, or maybe 4 really people have the story well. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to go around and put the story, stitch it back together as a group. This is called Group Tells a Story. So let's have your mics off unless you have a barking dog in the background. And so it can move a little bit quicker. And I really need your help, audience. I really need your help, because this is not Regina and Vicky telling the story. This is, we're all telling the story. And I know it's a little bit more difficult on Zoom than it is when we're in a room together. So Vicky's going to start with the first couple of phrases, and then just quickly raise your hand and then immediately chime in. You don't have to wait for me to answer you. Just that lets us know I'm going to speak. Go ahead, Vicki.
Okay. Well, on this day, when it was evening, Jesus told the disciples, let's go over to the other side. So leaving the crowd, they took Jesus with him in the boat, just as he was.
What comes next?
There was other boats with him.
Very good. Thank you, Scott. And then what happens?
Then a huge storm came up.
Thank you, Victoria. And what was happening with that storm?
The waves were crashing over the sides of the boat, and the boat was filling up with water. They were getting swamped, as Scott said, or somebody said.
Filling up with water. Very good. So the disciples,
So Jesus is asleep in the stern on a cushion.
yes, that's right. Thank you, Scott. That's next. And then the disciples.
The disciples woke Jesus up and asked him, don't you care about us? We are going to perish.
Thank you, Nadine. Excellent. So Jesus stands up, and then what does he do?
He rebuked the storm.
Said, peace, be still.
Yeah, he said to the waves, peace, be still. And then?
All of a sudden, all the things put into calm.
Yes. The wind died down and the sea was calm.
Calm.
I like the word in Spanish. There's a big bonanza. That's a word we borrowed from Spanish, bonanza, peace. Then what happens? Jesus says to his disciples.
Jesus says to his disciples, why you are afraid? Don't you have belief?
Very good. And their reaction?
They were in awe. They became afraid.
Even more afraid.
Who is this man that the wind and the storm obey him.
Very good. Okay. Was that with your Bible shut, guys? Because that was great. That was really great. Hand for all of us. I'm sure that everybody could go out and share that story over coffee with a friend. So let's dig into it and see what the Holy Spirit is speaking to us today. Because our delight is to hear God speaking both through his word and through one another. What did you like about this story or not like about this story?
It speaks to God's power over everything. So there's nothing that we need fear because it's all in God's control and under his will.
That is a wonderful reminder. Thank you, Scott. Anything else that comes to mind that you particularly like or maybe don't like?
I like
Yeah.
the fact that God in flesh, Jesus, was very, very human. He's a teacher. His role as a teacher, his role as a human, he got tired, he needed rest. And then the supernatural power of calming the storm that a human being couldn't do. And so there's quite a few features in this story that tell us about Jesus and how human he was and how powerful he was as well.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I like that the disciples were the people who were benefiting the power of Jesus directly, and they were observing the power directly, and they were watching Jesus. So I see myself as indirect, because we are not looking at directly to Jesus, but still we are benefiting. So it's very I like it that still the power of Jesus is working, and we are the beneficiaries, though indirect beneficiaries.
Thank you, Nadeem. Appreciate your comments. Anybody else?
I like the fact that Jesus rebuked the wind, but he didn't rebuke the disciples. He treated them differently. He didn't scold them. He used questions to help them think, but he didn't rebuke them. He rebuked the wind and the waves.
And I see there are two like what we can say a couple of things that Jesus rebuked. First, he rebuked the storm. Then he rebuked to the disciples. If there were some human beings, common human behavior is that if somebody is in trouble, most of the people are not going to solve the problem first, but they will rebuke the people first. Why are you here? And who caused you here? And definitely you did something wrong that you are here. So it's a common human behavior, but Jesus presented a good example. And the other couple, I see that disciples were first terrified with the storm, and it was a great terror, though some disciples were the people who used to swim or fish in this lake, but on the other side they were again afraid, but this time they were afraid with awe or respect, and they are thinking, and they are full of fear with surprise that who is this person whom storm and wind obey. So I see these two aspects.
Thank you, Nadeem. And thank you, Vicki. Very interesting comments. I really appreciate it. I too was surprised by the disciples' second reaction of being even more afraid, more afraid. And I could have mentioned in the introduction that these were professional fishermen, so that tells us something about this storm. The professional fishermen are panicked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything that surprised you, or is there something you like or didn't like? You can also mention that if you didn't get a chance.
Well, I don't like that it kind of points out our weakness in our lack of faith when things start going south on us. You know, I can relate to that, and makes me a little uncomfortable to acknowledge that. Hey, that's me too.
Can I add one thing,
Of
Regina?
course, please.
I don't like storm. Yeah, because it's not the storm of water or the wind which we now face, but most of the time the storms of troubles and difficulties and these things. So by nature we don't like it, but still we have to face it, and we have to believe in Jesus Christ, and he is the person who can bring us out of these difficulties and these storms of life.
Yeah. So Victoria and Rosalie, just because I can't see your faces, I just want to pause here and say, if you want to contribute something, I can't tell if you sort of make a movement like I can see with the others here. Be sure to let me know anytime.
I love how they were overcome at the end with such an awe. I mean, they had such an epiphany of who Jesus was, that he, you know, the power of God was in him. And I guess I love it when that feeling comes for me anew. So many times when I see amazing things God has done, is just that awe and reverence, you know, that amazement. And I love that part of the story. And I actually pray for that for people, that they can understand, have that fear of God, because we know him and we love him, and we know that he loves us so much. We kind sometimes take him for granted, like he's our friend. But there has to be those moments when you realize just how small you are and how big he is and how merciful he is to us, and the fact that he listens to us, that he's as big as he is and as powerful as he is, and that he would have anything to do with us. I mean, it's just a marvelous realization.
Thank you, Victoria. The humility of our God to listen to us. So let's talk about this story somewhat chronologically, and just to tease out some of the insights that the Holy Spirit might want for us today. So at the beginning, it's at the end of the day when evening had come, and Jesus had said to his disciples, let's go to the other side of the lake. So they dismissed the multitude, took Jesus with them in the boat just as he was, and there were other small boats with them. Pausing right there at that beginning part, what do we learn from the actions that we see that are happening right now and from what Jesus says? What do we learn about the disciples or about Jesus?
I'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
What's the just as he was about?
I had the same question.
Why would you include that? There's got to be a purpose, but I'm missing it.
Yeah.
It really just, I believe, one thing is that it places Jesus where he is. He is in the boat. He's teaching from the boat. He didn't leave to change his clothes or to relieve himself. He's going straight on from having taught all day long.
So they're trying to explain his fatigue, why he might be falling asleep.
It's just saying that, I mean, he has literally been teaching out in the sun all day long. Well, if you can imagine standing in the sun teaching all day long, he had been teaching all day long. This is at the end of the day. And, on the same day, so beforehand, it tells us a few parables, but obviously Jesus had been saying far more than a few parables. He had been teaching all day long. So it just places him. They didn't go down to the boat. It's just kind of a continuation. There may be more than that, but that's those few little words. It's amazing how succinct and how lack of detail the Bible gives us in these stories. But one of the beauties of that is that it activates our imagination, which we have to fill it in, and that helps us to put us into the story by telling us less. Any other insights? Because if you see something else there, please. As far as that phrase, go ahead, Vicki.
Find it interesting because we know that Jesus is all-knowing, and it was his idea to go over to the other side. So he knew that there was going to be a storm. So he was sending the disciples into this storm. He didn't prepare them. He didn't say, okay, we're going to go over to the other side, but you need to know that we're going to have a storm, so don't worry about it. I'm here with you. But he knew when he sent them and went with them to the other side that they were going to be in a storm. So that it's a good reminder to me that often God knows the storm. He always knows the storm that I'm going to go in. And he may not give me advance warning, but he is there with me.
Thank you. Any other?
Jesus is tired with the teaching of the whole day. But on the other side, I see that if somebody is subject and he's teaching, he's active. And definitely tiredness is there because when you teach, people suck your mind's energy and so many, because you have to you have to work really hard to convey and communicate your teachings. But on the other side, if we see the disciples are also tired because to listen someone else and to handle the crowd and these things are also tiring. So they are also tired. So both the parties, Jesus and the disciple, they both are willing and no complaint is there. And Jesus is urging them to let's go to other side of the lake. So they are following him. So it's a good sign to follow the Jesus and obey him. But definitely afterwards things are more unpleasant. So definitely there is a test of their faith as well. But as a simple fact, it's a good fact. Although there is tiredness, but they are willing to go.
Thank you, Nadeem. I'd never thought about the fact that the disciples were out in the sun all day too. And then they've got to start rowing, right?
Yeah.
It kind of strikes me that that Jesus says we're going to the other side, and then he goes in the back of the boat and he lays down and goes to sleep. And it seems to me that this is the point that the disciples say, okay, we're fishermen, we know boats, we got this. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they take over. Okay, we're going to get the eye. We can, so now they're in their comfort zone because this is what they can do. And they think they're going to serve Jesus by getting him to the other side of the lake.
Yeah.
And just like us, when, okay, Lord, you got me here. I'll take it from here, right? And all of a sudden the storm comes up and they're going like, whoa. And they have to be rescued, so just like us all the time, when we take things back into our hands and say, okay, I got it. I don't know, it just kind of struck me as Nadeem was speaking that, these guys think they got it all, okay, I'm thinking all day long they're with the crowd and everything, which is probably uncomfortable for them. Now they're in their comfort zone in the boat.
Yeah, now they're comfort zone, yes.
Well, they thought they were until the storm, right? And so, I don't know, it's kind of running around my brain.
Thank you, Scott. I think you're hitting a little close to home, though. Very good insights. Anybody else? So let's go to the next scene. There's a tremendous windstorm to such an extent that the waves are filling the boat. And the waves are crashing into the boat. It's filling up. And so the disciples, like Jesus is asleep in the stern of the boat. So the disciples go and wake him up and say, Master, don't you care? We're about to perish. We'll stop there. Well, we'll say that Jesus stands up. We'll stop there.
Well, it was a pretty amazing thing that Jesus was asleep through all of this. I think it was a faith test that Jesus didn't involve himself when the storm first started. He just kept on sleeping. But yeah, they probably were amazed that he could sleep through all of that. And then in their frustration, they said, don't you care that we're ready to perish,
I can hear Mary and Martha in this. Lord, if you were here, our brother wouldn't have died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's that same thing that we're still trying to take over the story.
It's
instead of letting God be God.
Well, it's an accusation, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's an accusation. And I forgot with our group to ask that we keep with the Bible stories that we've discussed together as a group. So if you guys have discussed the Mary Martha.
No, it just comes to mind that, it's.
Yes. And let me mention just as a little teaching point here, Scott, that the reason we make that guideline is that people with a lot of Bible knowledge can intimidate those that don't. And so by limiting your discussion to what the group has in common, and if you've been meeting together for a while, you can have a lot in common. You can go back to any stories that the group has done together. But especially those who are more educated, more knowledgeable, can, with that extra knowledge, intimidate others from feeling that they can hear or have much to say. So that's an important tip, and I apologize for not making that instruction at the beginning. Yes, Nidhi?
Regina, I was thinking when the story was being told second time, that maybe the reason for the storm is devil, because he sees that Jesus is sleeping and he wanted to kill him, because it may be, because it's just a thought. But maybe whatever the reason of that storm is, whether it's a natural phenomenon or it's caused by a devil, because he wanted to, it's not just for the disciples, it may be an attack on Jesus as well. So I see whatever the cause is, but the storm is furious. It's unusual
Mhm.
and unexpected as well, because for the fishermen it's too big, and if the fishermen are getting terrified, then definitely the other disciples, for other disciples who were common people, the people of the dry land, they were definitely more afraid. So they see death nearby. They were looking that they are surely going to die if something is not being happened. So I see that it's a big crisis for their life. So
Thank you, Nadim. I often wonder too, what about those other little boats? You know, there it says there were other.
Yeah. What's the point of bringing them into the story?
Good question, Scott. You've got lots of good questions. What do you think?
Well, maybe they were witnesses of what happened. And so maybe the point was, okay, hey, there's other people around. You can go check with them and, verify what we're saying. That's the only thing I can come up with.
They certainly experienced this incredible immediate calm.
Yeah. Hey, what just happened?
Yeah. Anything else we can learn from that section? Okay, I'm going to move on. And if I didn't catch you, Victoria, Rosalia, just feel free to chime in and go a little further back, because like I said, I can't see your faces. So they wake up, Jesus stands up. He rebukes the wind and he says to the sea, peace, be still. And immediately the wind ceases, and the sea is calm. And he says to the disciples, have you no faith? Why are you afraid? It's the end. And the disciples are even more afraid. And they say to one another, who is this that even the sea and the wind obey him? So Nadim, I think you can see something of what you're talking about in the fact that he rebukes the storm. He rebuked the storm.
yeah.
I mean, I don't rebuke my chair. I don't rebuke my coffee cup.
The rebuke's a pretty strong term.
Yeah. And what does it indicate, the fact that he is rebuking?
It's to rebuking to some person. What you want to say? It's because it's kind of opponent, and rebuking is to, if Jesus rebuked the disciples, so the storm is also a kind of same thing what you are pointing out.
And what you were saying, Nadim, is, that this storm was categorically greater than normal. And maybe it could have been caused by something, some opposition. And I think that this fact that Jesus rebukes the storm supports that insight. Were you going to speak, John?
Yeah, you guys are bringing up good observations, and interesting how one learns from one another as we speak. But this thing of quiet, have you guys ever remember your mother or your dad saying quiet, and or a teacher in a classroom and the kids are rowdy and quiet and there's suddenly silence? That's comes to my mind. But rebuking a storm, sometimes in other scenarios, Jesus rebuked or cast out demons or did other things where he showed his power.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regina and Scott. It's a good insight, because the thing which were in first section about the storm, but with the rebuke word, it's more clear now that there is someone, not someone, some opponents behind that. So it's a good reflection. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else that we can see from the actions of the disciples or Jesus' words? Nadeem?
First, there was, I see both terrors are fears with two things, because first terror was related with death, but the second terror about Jesus' personality was, though it was surprise and they were more terrified, but still there was no death, but it was connected to life, and the question is related to the life and the person who gives life. So it's very strange and unique for me as well, because first they were terrified by the death, but now they have fear for the person who is life-giving.
Yeah, I'm wondering in your Bibles how verse 41 is translated. Mine, this is NIV, is very much afraid.
Yeah, great fear.
Great fear. What translation using, Scott?
Let's see.
Same.
Great fear.
ESV.
Anybody else have anything else in there?
Yeah, I have actually Urdu Bible. It's not, I don't have English Bible with me. So in our Urdu translation, our national language, it's also the same thing. They were more terrified. The expression shows that they were more terrified when they thought about Jesus.
This translation doesn't say anything about their fear of the storm. They just demonstrate it when they go to Jesus and say, "Don't you care? We're going to die." But now they're saying they were in great fear. So, or tremendous fear.
I mean, the first one, their fear is obvious by their actions, and
actions.
We clearly infer fear.
Yeah, but they didn't mention it here. They mention it, so it's like.
And I have one translation here that says overwhelmed with fear. You know, you gotta love technology where at a touch of a finger, you can have about 20 translations. Overwhelmed with fear.
I guess we gotta assume that Mark was with them at this time.
No, not necessarily.
You think Mark writes his book, right? So
Mark is writing Peter's story.
So he was told the story.
Mark,
although he could have been with them, right?
Peter is the storyteller to the Mark.
Yeah. Mark writes Peter's story. Mark may have been in a garden, so he may have certainly had encounters with Jesus, knew Jesus personally.
Yeah, John Mark, he hung out with him a lot, didn't he?
I am breaking my own rules. Don't
There
let
you
me
go.
get away with that, Vicky. We'll find out about that. I'll look into that, and we'll discuss that next week, Scott. Any other?
Sure we will.
We learned. I love the different languages. I wonder what it is in Spanish. Do you have a Spanish translation?
I can look it up.
Anyways, we certainly.
In Spanish,
John, you dropped out.
it says in the translation that llenados, fueron llenados de miedo, filled with fear. The tank was full. No more room for more fear.
We're spilling over the sides of the boat.
Wow.
Very good. Very good. What about the why are you so afraid? How is it you have no faith?
It's interesting that they called him in this version, in the ESV, they said teacher.
Right.
And I almost feel like they're getting a private lesson. They've seen Jesus teach all day long. They've seen the crowds listening to him, but then they leave the crowd and now they're with Jesus by themselves in kind of an intimate situation. And they say, teacher, do you not care? And then he actually does teach them with questions, but not questions that he's asking because he needs to know the answer. He already knows the answers. He's using these questions to help them learn and help them discover. And I think they discover that, wow, we don't really know Jesus like we thought we did, because they said, who is this?
Mm-hmm.
They probably thought, oh, we've been with Jesus for a while. We know Jesus. We know him better than the crowds. But then in this situation, there's discovery. I just love how they're discovering so much experiential learning, discovery learning through questions, reflection questions, and then realizing, wow, we don't really know Jesus. And I think that's how we are often, that we think we know Jesus. We think we know God. But then we come into a situation, we realize, wow, I don't know God as much as I thought I did, as deeply as I thought I did.
Thank you, Vicki.
I think the point's the same for us, right? We don't need to fear. Right?
Yeah.
We're with Jesus, we don't need to fear, but we still do. So I think that's what he's trying to point out here is he says, this isn't necessary. You don't need to be afraid.
Thank you, Scott. Nadine?
Regina, I just observe, and I may be wrong, but I just want to share maybe for some others insights. When they woke the Jesus up, and they asked him, teacher, don't you care? We are going to perish. So I see there is a kind of complaint in this, because they are not asking for saving them. Maybe I just thought that they may be asking him that please come help us. Yeah, it may be because help us. Maybe you can throw the water out as you are throwing, and maybe you are helping in some other matters, and you are a teacher, and you are going to be with us and help us in boating against the storm. So impression is such like, but Jesus did more than their thoughts, if these are their thoughts, because they are not asking for saving them, but they are just asking him, don't you care? We are going to perish. So Jesus, more than their expectation, if it is so.
Yeah, he certainly met more than their expectation, more than an extra hand to bail.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I wonder what Jesus was expecting. How is it you still have no faith? How is it that you have no faith? What do you think he was expecting?
Well, so Jesus is saying, let's go across the other side. And this is a point that has been mentioned to me in the past. He told them where they were going. He said, we're going to the other side. They didn't believe him. Right? There's got to be some lack of trust or lack of faith in what he told them in order to question that they were going to get there.
Yeah. I can understand their questioning. They're about to drown.
But he's turning it around and saying, but don't you believe in me? After all we've been through, do you still not understand the mission and who I am?
Yeah.
Right. As Vicky said, they recognized him as teacher.
Yeah.
They knew him as teacher.
Yeah, they didn't call him Lord, did they? They called him teacher. Well, in this translation anyway.
Yeah, teacher.
Which is like rabbi, right?
Yes. Yeah. And my apology, I believe I did say master once. It's teacher. It's clearly teacher. It's not master.
Teacher. Yeah. But one of the points that was brought out earlier, I think, by Vicky is, and I think just a little caution is, we might assume that Jesus knew about the storm, but it's that struggle between his fully man and fully God. We don't know what he knows. We know that he has complete trust and knowledge in the mission that his Father has given him and where he's going. So he knows he's not going to perish on the lake. But we don't know if he knew the storm was coming, especially if it was initiated by the enemy. But he rebukes the storm because it's not in keeping with the mission. It's not supporting the mission that he's on. And as the creator, everything should be in submission to the mission that he's on. So I think it's interesting to bring up the point that it could be Satan trying to foil his plans.
Mm-hmm. Very.
Thank you.
What other choices did the disciples have? What would
keep bailing?
Bailing.
Okay, how's this going to turn out? I mean, I've gotten to that point now in my life where the storms keep coming, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is I perish. Okay, so I'll be with my Savior today. Big deal.
So realized.
So yeah. So all along it's like, okay, how's this? How? Okay, Lord, what are you going to do with this one? How's this going? How are you going to use this for your glory? It's a really once I got to that point, it made life so much easier.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, this is just such a short experiential thing now that, okay, here's my plans, Lord. Let's go with yours.
John, were you going to say something?
Hi. Sorry, I'm taking care of an emergency here. I'm a medical doctor. I'll have to get the mic off. Sorry.
No problem. Go ahead and mute your mic. I didn't know if that clearing of the voice was that you wanted to say something. It's like I said, without a visual, it's hard to know. Nadeem?
Regina, I see that they could have worshipped him. They could have bowed down before him after he rescued them from the storm. But they are surprised. They are stunned. And what another option they could do, if we see in our present scenario, they definitely could have taken him to McDonald's for a treat because he rescued them. But yeah, but they were definitely all the time with him. And after this story, we see that they are in the land of Decapolis, the city of the Grasa and Gadra. So we see in a very hostile situation they went off. But it's a great thing. Definitely, it's to grasp Jesus and to know Him more. This experience was a tremendous experience for them because they were going to know Him from a rabbi or a simple teacher to a person who can have control over the power of nature. And because the storm, because the wind and the water were used to be worshipped as gods. So they were seeking that this is the person who is handling the gods, earthly gods, and they are he's handling the powers of the nature. So it was a kind of revelationary experience for them as well. And definitely to digest it, they need more time. And after his resurrection and other things, they were, oh, this was the great experience which we had. But for the time being, it was very stunning and unexpected experience for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, instead of questioning his care for them, they could have come to him and save us, right? I guess they haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah. I mean, just the matter of tone, the matter of attitude. I like also when Nadim was talking about how, he questions them, but so often in what our habit is to do is to accuse and blame.
Yeah, I recognize that.
So we're going to move right to that, our application, how, and Scott has made a couple of applications so naturally in our conversation already, but how do you see people with similar problems today, similar issues and feelings, and or do you see how this applies directly to your own life?
I'd like to say something. This is along the lines of what Nadim was saying and some of the things Scott said, but I've noticed that a lot of the storms in my life have been precursors to or faith builders that I needed along the way, because there was something else coming that the Lord was preparing me for. And I know that we're not supposed to step outside of the story, but if you peek ahead, you see their next experience with Jesus. I think they needed that faith builder to know that he had the power of God in him. Jesus had the power, to command the universe, but they at least had to know that he had power over. They had to have that realization that he has the power of God in him, and I think they needed a fresh to see it afresh before they went to encounter the Gadarene demoniac, and know that he could command the wind and the waves. And sometimes in my own life, I've had to have God show himself, show his power afresh in different situations. And like Scott said, I've gotten more to the point. I've moved much farther in the direction over the years as, okay, Lord, how are you going to use this storm for your glory? Because that's why I think God allows a lot of the storms is, okay, how do you want to use me? How do you want to use us in this situation to glorify yourself? So
thank you, Victoria. Yes, Nadim?
Yeah, I see every day, every new morning, there are some new storms hitting the life. Uh, but one striking thing could be very helpful and is always helpful, that if Jesus is with me, uh, no storm can perish me.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. And I was just thinking that at that time, some of the divine aspects of Jesus in his earthly life was were limited, but after his resurrection, he's
Yeah.
they all the divine elements are fully functional, and even in his glorious body, he's sitting right at the throne of God. And the similarities with Paul, that why you persecute me, it's an identification that Jesus feel the pain and the struggles and the trouble which we face today. So it's a great thing that he suffers with us while we go through the storms, but he has the power to remove those storms. But sometimes he lets the storm come into our life, and it's also for for his glory. So it's his purpose, and we have to be submissive to his will during these storms and during all our course of life.
Thanks, Nadine. Anyone else? We have time for just one more short share on how this might apply to your life or our lives.
I get a kick out of Victoria. I think she's alluding to the fact that the disciples might have been beaten feet for the boat when they saw the demoniac on the shore. If they hadn't known that Jesus could handle this, they're going like, "Oh, they would get you running away, brave Sir Robert."
It's possible.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I like to. My catchword phrase for the last decade has been, if we don't need him, he doesn't need to show up.
Yeah.
I used to, just dig into myself for the fixes I get in, all the trouble I end up finding myself in. And like you said, Victoria, this storm is always an open door for a revelation. God in a new way. But, that time between he says, let's go to the other side, and the next time we hear from him, sometimes is really long.
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel that identification that you were talking about, Scott, with these disciples. I really feel it.
I just wish I could believe that it was all him trying to teach me something rather than my foolishness that I'm suffering from. Maybe it's both. I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes they say, despite our best efforts, God still works.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, we think it's about us, right?
I'm just going to pop into Psalm 103 because I memorized it. He himself knows our frame. He remembers that we are but dust. So he can. He's so gracious, so gracious. So I'm going to recap a few things about the model. It's so powerful to follow Jesus' example of using questions. Like Nadine said, in our naturally we tend to teach or accuse or blame. But Jesus, is so often using questions. He's so often using questions.
Mhm.
And questions are very indirect way. I mean, we can use questions to accuse, like the disciples did. Don't you care? Okay, we can use it that way too. But so often, questions are an indirect way to come about getting people to shift their focus. Takes, wisdom. But I'd really like to encourage you to use more questions with people, to point people to Jesus through story rather than telling them what to do, telling them how to believe. Point them to a story that helps them to maybe grasp what they need to hear. And the beauty of working with a group for a while and allowing these insights to come from the group means if you are willing to slow down and take time to do that, my brothers and sisters, what you will find is that their confidence in hearing directly from the Lord through his word, their confidence builds. Their knowledge of their scripture builds because they've reviewed it many times and you're encouraging them to go out and share it. It's a fabulous mentoring, discipling tool. Unfortunately, most of us don't listen to what we're told, and we're working more in our own head than we even show, than what we're receiving. So we as teachers want to help them, want to give them what they need, but how often are they actually picking up and running with that? If storytelling and discussion, mentoring through questioning, these are powerful tools, and we see our master doing it so much, far more than preaching. There were days he preached and teached, and we need to preach and teach, but we see far more examples as the scriptures are far more examples of the actual stories in doing. Percentage-wise, huge percentage of narrative in the Bible. So I'll review the steps that you would start with. Reporting back. That's everybody sharing both who they share the Bible story with, how it impacted their lives, how they're able to apply something. Next is introducing the story. That's your responsibility as the host. And some stories need a lot of introduction, others little. Depends on your audience. Always geared toward your audience. Then a volunteer tells the story. Then we open our Bibles and check the volunteer. Always be gracious. Always encourage your volunteer. If they get up there and they say 3 sentences and they've got one idea right, well, that's great. That's what they learned. The worst thing you can do is make this a test. It's not a test, a very friendly environment where whatever effort we make is applauded and encouraged. Then you go through that cycle of opening Bibles, checking what did they add or what did they forget. Don't get nitpicking on exact word for word. If they have the same idea, if they use 10 words instead of 1 word, that's okay. If they translated the idea correctly, you want the idea is correctly represented, not word for word. Word for word will kill the spontaneity of your following volunteers and will intimidate people. I'd even encourage people to say it in their own word, try to draw them away from feeling that they have to be word for word accurate, because it's difficult, it's a lot of pressure. And we want them to walk out and share it with someone else. Okay, then so the volunteer group check happens at least twice, maybe 3 times. Depends on how much time you have in your group. Then the group retells it. Now, you as storyteller, Bibles are shut, so you as storyteller need to know this story well enough so that if the group misses something, you can put it in accurately. And so you're going to gently correct if they say it incorrectly. you're going to say good, and then you put it in correctly. But your correctly is not a word for word correct, once again. Okay, if they got the basic idea without adding a whole lot, or maybe you need to fill in one word, maybe they forgot a verb or something that's important. Okay, and so you just, so that going through it as a group, a lot of encouragement from you as a host, a lot of keep that flowing and very positive interaction. Then you're going to go to using questions. You'll see a list of questions here, and I think we have another sheet of questions. You know, we covered almost half of our discussion, about a third of our discussion time with what do you like and not like. When you have people who are spiritually hungry, oh my, you don't even have to hardly ask a question. I didn't hardly have to ask a question. If you have people who are religious and think they know all about it, you're going to have to ask more questions. And you're going to have to pull through the story very slowly, looking at each action, each interaction. And then the Holy Spirit will bring much more out of that, okay? And if you're working with new believers or people that don't know much about the Bible story, once again, even with that group, like and not like, it's fairly easy. The group that's hardest to work with are those that don't have hungry hearts. I hope you don't have too many of those. Even so, God works so marvelously, so marvelously. And then, of course, you can, in the questions or application, and I'm sorry, I didn't ask you my last question. Where or with whom will you share this story this week? So this model ends with a strong encouragement for them to make a commitment to share this story with someone else. Okay, I'm sorry, Mauricio, I went a little over time. We need to hear some announcements from Mauricio, and also you'll be getting the whole overview of this model. Very easy, very fun model. I hope you enjoyed it.
No, we are good with the time, Regina. Thank you so much. I know that everyone just enjoy what you taught, and I already sent to everyone in the group the the document with the information about today's training. Then that is great. And I've been, by the way, I don't know, probably we can take some minutes. I would like maybe to hear Nadim, because Nadim had been using all the training that he had been receiving from different speakers, using orality over there in Pakistan. And I know, Nadim, that you have been sharing even photos and so that are not good to publish, but it's amazing what is going on over there in the different places the Lord has taken you these days. And probably you can take a couple of minutes or so just sharing about some of those experiences to encourage us, but especially encourage people like Regina, who has spent years learning and studying and also teaching Bible storytelling to different people, including you and others in your region.
Okay, thank you, Mauricio. I just want to share that I started storytelling with my family members, 3 family members, even my mother sits in the group, and she's illiterate, and my wife and my sister and 3 or 4 friends of my sister. So these are ladies with whom I shared uh, maybe 10 days ago one story, and they were so much excited that whenever I go through the street, because our houses are very close by, so everyone asking for when you are going to share the next story, because they were so much impressed by the this technique. And even they got many insights. So it was a great time for them to share. It's not just a sermon to listen from the pastor or preacher. So they were sharing, and they shared a very new insight, and the time to relate the story with their own life, it was marvelous. And I shared this story, the same story which we worked today, a day before yesterday, Jesus and the storm. And my mother started crying that the storm, because she was worried about my health, because I'm suffering through a spinal issue these days. So first time when she heard about this, so she was so much depressed, and still she was. But with this story, she was encouraged that if we see the things with the eyes of God, then definitely troubles and storm doesn't mean anything. So this is a very exciting experience we are having. And as you are sharing, I was thinking that maybe for next week, there are some boys whom I can focus this week. So tomorrow evening we are again we are going to share the story with the females. So maybe in couple of days or 3 or 4 days, I will be sharing this story with the boys as well. So another thing I was thinking, and God put in my heart that we in Pakistan are living in a situation of persecution. So I thought that maybe a set of some stories from the Bible which are related with the persecution situation, and how God and the men of God and believers dealt with that situation. So I just wanted to raise the question. So I pick one story, and that is the first persecuted person, the Abel and the Cain. So this story, from this story, I have started, and the next I have chose. I didn't written that in Urdu and put the question, but I have thought about Joseph, because that also a kind of a persecution situation. So this is the thing I have started, and I want to develop it. And I was seeking this training for many years. So it's the time to implement the things, and God is using me, and I want to be used more for this work. And it's a marvelous work because it connects directly with the lives of the people. So thank you so much, all the trainers, Mauricio, Azure Technician, and Regina. Today we have wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. It's just exciting hearing you, and yeah, it's wonderful, especially when we are equipped. We are able to use that everywhere, anytime, and so then it's great and for the glory of God. Thank you so much, everyone. We are gonna be sending some invitations to other trainings in the following weeks. There's any of you familiar with Storyline Ministries? Storyline. Well, it's highly probably that we're going to have a brother and a friend from Storyline providing some training. They normally do face-to-face training, especially in missions. It's something similar to Kairos, or even to or what is the other name? Uh, um, perspective, but it's more condensed and more straightforward, and so then probably you can find a useful for the training that you provide to different people. I know you, Vicky, train others, and Regina and others, and like have some leadership in the churches, and so then I will we will let you know when the training is, and so to use have the opportunity to take it and even to invite others to participate. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Regina. It has been a blessing to have you these days. I know that everyone is going to remember you every time they use stories. I received an email earlier from Polly saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry that I cannot attend today's training, but it's wonderful because we have now the recording in Facebook and YouTube that you are also able to revisit, or Polly, she's gonna be able to watch it." Then thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. I don't know if any one of you have something to add or say before we close.
I'm very blessed by Pastor Nadim's testimony of how he's using it and what's happening there. It just thrills my heart. God's using that.
Thank you, Victoria. I know that that's encouraging for Nadine, encouraging for us. Even I was recently, last week, I think, connecting your husband, Victoria Dubon, with, for everyone to know, Victoria's husband and their family. Actually, they lead a ministry with water purification over there in Indiana. Then we have been connected for some years, so partnering in different ways, and it's amazing how we are able to connect people like Dubon and their ministry with people in India and in other places. Probably a good connection also for Nadine. Then feel free to connect, and if you don't have access to the you can just write me and I can give you emails and connect. And so it's wonderful what the people of God just come together and follow what the Lord is leading us to do, and we see wonderful things happening. Even remembering how we connect the first time with Nadine. Actually, it was Regina through Increased Association in Asia, meetings in Thailand and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Then it's amazing what the Lord is doing over there, and I'm very being so proud just to have friends over there. I'm very grateful with our common brother Richard Morris, who started this movement years ago and still is giving so much fruit everywhere. It's just amazing, just amazing. Well, then thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
And Mauricio, before we close, I thought that maybe we should make a commitment to pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters around the world. I know it's tough in Pakistan, but persecution is everywhere. So I just ask that we'd all commit to praying for the persecuted around the world.
Yeah, that is great, Scott. Maybe you wanna do that right now, and then we take that prayer request to our different groups. But the way I was invited a couple of weeks ago to co-lead the Comina movement as an executive director, then to use some of my hours during the week to help propel the cooperation of missions for the Hispanics of North America. Then I think the Lord is doing great things with people all over. Then, but persecution is a tough thing in Nadine's place, but also in so many places. Then it's great that we bring together, inviting others to be part of a prayer movement. Then, yeah, please go ahead, Scott, and closing prayer. Thank you.
Most holy and precious Heavenly Father, we come before you in humility and praise. All glory and honor is yours, Almighty Father, now and forevermore. We just pray that we would be confident in your lordship and your ability to control everything, and that we would just leave things in your hands. We do and approach your throne and ask that you would be with our persecuted brothers and sisters around the world, that you would comfort them, that you would come alongside and remind them that you are in control and you have a purpose for all the suffering and all the persecution. And pray that through it all, Lord, that you would be glorified and others would be saved. Pray all this in the most holy and precious name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Also, before closing, one more thing. As you were praying, Scott, I was thinking that as you as you do your ministry, as you use the skills and the new learning and so in different places, probably you come to a point to need some maybe partner or person to help you, maybe during a training or so. Then feel free, and for anyone, feel free to connect to each other directly, or if you want anytime, just send email to me or to other in the group, to Regina directly or so. We will be happy just trying to help. I know that Dr. Longworth is in Costa Rica, and so many missionaries come to the Spanish Language Institute over there. Then we are open if maybe there's a group one day that they want to receive some kind of orality training or so. Then we are able to connect with Regina or with Polly or so, and then we can try to assist and continue equipping others for the work of the ministry. I was last night late just recording a video for a group of pastors in Venezuela. You know, the whole persecution over there and different problems over there right now they are facing. And then around 200 pastors are going to meet this afternoon to just watch the video. But it's amazing the opportunity that they have to go to different countries of Venezuela, and now having their people all over the world. Venezuelans are all over the world now. Then the opportunity they have to continue equipping their people if they are properly equipped. Then is the Lord is opening new opportunities so for each of us, as we are able to continue partnering and discovering together what the Lord is doing and is gonna do in the future. Then thanks again.
Praise God.
Yeah, praise God. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you, Mauricio. What a delight to
Wonderful day.
Mauricio, just want to apologize for interrupting today's class. I didn't realize the mute was not on, but I did share this link that you sent us with half dozen people. I hope other folks could have joined us today. Very good. Thank you.
Oh, no problem, Dr. Longworth. Thank you so much, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
And Dr. Longworth, we didn't hear anything that was going on your end. The only thing that came through was like once. So it did not really interrupt the class at all. It was not a problem.
No, and sometimes unexpected things are great, because if maybe we are like we need those things also, then that's not a problem at all.
Mauricio,
Uh-huh.
thank you, Vicky.
Thanks so much, Vicky. Wonderful.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Vicky.
Enjoy.
Thank you, Mauricio. Thank you, Regina.
Blessings to all.
you, everybody. Yes, be blessed.
Ciao, ciao.
Okay.
Ciao, ciao.
Now.
Bye, Regina.
Adios.
Bye.
Adios.
Pórtense